Welcome to Nomads of the Noetic for podcast number 7. Today, we are going to be discussing a new topic: alchemy of human potential.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Trace Pearl and Randy Brown here again with you today on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. We are glad that you're joining us today. And today, Randy and I are going to be talking with you about alchemy and human potential. And I think this is going to be interesting. You know, we haven't coordinated on this. So this is just going to be a regular coffee shop discussion, and we hope that you're going to participate as you see it, and as you feel like you've got something to contribute. Come on into the Facebook group for Nomads of the Noetic and be part of it. Let us know what you think. So, alchemy and human potential, right?
Trace,
Randy, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
well, Trace sent me a text message this morning and he said, "What do you think about this topic?" And I said, "That sounds interesting." And, but I want you to know, Trace, the first thing that pops in my head was alchemy. And which I just have to visualize this medieval dungeon with a primitive chemist trying to work his magic or his chemistry to take worthless metal and turn it into gold. And I don't know if that is quite the imagery that we're trying to reflect in this discussion, but it does remind me of some of the things that have been said to me in the past about, even in a religious tone, about sometimes the pressure we're under is the pressure that turns us into diamonds. It's the pressure that polishes us. So, I mean, in a way, it does have those same kind of imagery to me, that maybe that prospect of human potential does have some of those very same elements.
Right.
But
Right.
the one thing that I'm hoping for as we discuss this is that we'll also reflect, because I see it like, okay, they're working their chemistry and I see explosions and sparks and bubbling liquids. And while
Yeah.
part of that may be obvious as a human looks for their optimum potential, but I also think part of that process of getting to our potential is also healing in that journey to that. So anyway, I hope that we come across some of those thoughts as we talk about it. Those were my first thoughts
Yeah,
when you
exactly.
texted me.
Yeah, I love it. You know, those are great thoughts, and when I was thinking about that. In fact, on our Facebook group, I posed that kind of a fun question. You know, how many alchemists does it take to transmute base metal into gold? And I know a couple people had put out their guesses. Yours was one of them that was out there, and and so I'm going to give you a hint as to what the correct answer is on this. Okay, so the hint is this: there was an old joke out there. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb?
Well, now it might be 13.
No, okay, only one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Okay. So the question then becomes, how many alchemists does it take, right, to
Yes.
transmute base metal into gold? It
Go.
only takes one, but the base metal has to want to change.
There we
So
go.
does that, yeah, do you see Exactly, right?
I get
So
it.
that's what's happening, right? With a lot of times when we work with people, they're at this base level, this base metal existence of who they are as a person, and at the same time, through transmutation of the soul, of the mind, of the spirit, right? They can truly transform themselves, transmute themselves into something different. That's the human potential that we're talking about that comes through the noetic, through the spirit. And but you can't do it, right? I mean, some base metals, some people just want to stay at whatever level that they're comfortable at,
Right.
and they don't want to be mixing things up and creating sparks and explosions, down in the basement, of their being, so they just want to stay comfortable. So that was the first part of this that I wanted to talk with you about, and you collectively, everybody.
Trace, the other thing I think about when you say base metal several times in that discussion is I think about our modern use of that term. Is we always use it to refer to something that's inferior, uh, something that is not made in the optimum way, something that is usually more breakable. However, not useless.
Right.
We use it a lot of times to make things that are temporary or not intended
Mhm.
to go on forever, or things that we want to save a lot of cost on. And so we use base metal.
Yes.
And I don't know
Right.
that the analogy remains to be consistent, but I think about that when we think about human potential, uh, we don't want to go down the track of encouraging people to remain a base metal because it's quicker or because it
Right.
can be useful for the moment. Because that seems to be
Yes.
what base metal is. It's useful for now, but in the long term, when heavy stress is put on it, it breaks down.
Yes.
And repairing base metal is very difficult. It has to
Right.
be remade.
Yeah.
It's not like gold because you can repair gold. You can repair it with gold, but base metal you can't repair with base metal. You can't
Yeah.
repair it.
Right.
It has to be recast.
Yeah.
So I mean, you start from the beginning when that breaks down. And so I don't know if the analogies are totally sound, but it does make me think that even the way we use that in context today, uh,
Yeah.
if we apply that to what we think about becoming all that you can be, we don't
Yeah.
want to get stuck in a base metal phase. But one more thing I wanted
Yeah.
to say about the alchemist, um, and I don't know this to be true, but I'm just theorizing that part of what they did in their effort to discover this impossibility, actually, I think it was possible, but they didn't quite find the formula, and that's what we
Hmm.
really want to talk about is the formula. I think we get to, but part of what they did do is they found some very interesting things along the way in the process. So
Exactly.
they developed some incredible metals that
Yeah.
they weren't
Yeah.
gold, but they were very strong. They were very
Hmm.
useful, and some we've not been able to duplicate since. So
Right.
I'm not
Right.
sure that they didn't reach their goal. It's just that their goal may have been misstated or
Right.
misaligned or not fully thought out. I don't know. Maybe their imagery is not exactly what we're looking for, but they discovered some things
Yeah.
in the process of doing it, and that's what I think is interesting is that uh, it's not that they didn't get anywhere. even in the process of doing it, they made great gains. They just didn't get to that
Right.
one that they thought about. So anyway, I just wanted to, I get stuck on this idea of alchemy and that imagery
Yeah.
that you gave me
Yeah.
just from saying, what do you think about alchemy? And that's what those are the thoughts that I
Yeah.
had initially about this. But I know we want to move on and talk about how that relates to what we're talking about with human potential.
Well, it does. It all relates. I think, even the ancient alchemists, they were laying a foundation for and doing what we're doing, in our own ways, right? They were engaging in the art of wondering, but they were taking that wondering one step further, and they were actually doing something with it. They were experimenting. And so if you take one thing that is at a lower level, whether it's metal, and they were trying to experiment with different types of fibers, I think as well. So you're taking some lower level and you're trying to actually change the essence of that thing into something greater, something more valuable. And when you were talking about metals basically breaking down, I'm looking at another example. So I've got a basic water bottle here, right? And so if we're trying to, and this is a difference between and transmuting. So sometimes people will say, alchemists were trying to transform base metals into gold. No, they weren't, right? They weren't trying to just change the form of it. They were trying to transmute it. So the actual essence was different. What we do with recycling plastic, right? When we recycle plastic, we are trying to transform something that was unusable. Now it goes into the recycling bin. We bring it back out. We do some things with it. But every time that you transform this, it becomes thinner, doesn't it? This particular bottle is fairly intact, but I've had some of them that were almost as thin as like paper, right? They just
Right.
start falling apart. And so that's something that I've seen that happens with the human psyche. If we are going to remain at this basal level of our existence, where we're only focused on our behaviors, our thinking, and our feeling, well, guess what? Life happens, right? Presenting problems continue to wear away at us, just like a plastic water bottle. And so, if we're not doing something to not only transform ourselves, but we're actually trying to transmute, we're trying to get something more out of us than just a little extra, cognitive horsepower or a couple extra steps, on our walks or our run. We're actually trying to transmute the human potential that we had before into something greater than base metal into gold, right? But the thing that's the key is the person has to want to make that transmutation. It doesn't happen on its own.
Right.
That make a little sense or not?
Right. No, I agree.
Right. So it's first the light bulb has to want to change. The base metal has to want to change and be transmuted into gold. And each one of us, the individual, has to make that conscious choice that says, my free will says, I'm good. I'm appreciative. I value the life that I have right now, but I know that there's something within me that can reach an exponential potential from what I thought I was capable of before.
Right.
Right.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that sometimes, and especially with the example you've given, that the transforming is easier than transmuting.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we take that pathway. And from as a trained behaviorist, for example, and I've
Mhm.
taught a lot of classes about behavior, and changing someone's behavior, quite frankly, is just so easy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and anybody that's gone to an animal show knows this. Uh, You can get animals to do crazy things that seem unbelievable, uh, and they're just
Hmm.
not. They're things that they can physically do. They just train them to do it. And it's just easy. It's frankly easy. I mean, it's such a simple thing, and we
Yeah.
do it in our lives every day anyway, to each other and all around us. We manipulate people's behavior all the time. The thing about that
Right.
is, uh, and I'm going to give you an example of that, Trace. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a cheesy example. When I go up to the elevator, I always do the same thing. I push the button. Why? Because the elevator comes. Okay. So
Right.
I push the button because it comes every time it comes.
It's the stimulus and the response. You can
It
count
pays
on it.
off. It pays off every time.
Okay.
So then when the
Yeah.
elevator's broken and I walk up to it, I don't care if they put a big sign on it. I don't care if they put yellow tape around it. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to push the button
Yep.
and I'll push it again and I'll push it again.
Yeah.
But eventually I figure
Yep.
out it's not going to come. So I stop pushing the
Right.
button. I mean, it's
Yeah.
easy to manipulate somebody's behavior. We do it all the time. That's an easy thing. But the truth is, has
Yeah.
that changed anything core about me as a person? No.
Yeah.
You
Right.
just
Yep.
manipulated my behavior, what I'm going to do. You didn't manipulate my motivations. You didn't manipulate. Let's say you really wanted me to be more health conscious. So you were forcing me to take the stairs
Right.
instead of the elevator. So you made it stop working.
Right.
Okay, I took the stairs because you,
Yeah.
you turned the elevator off and you put a sign on it. Okay, well, as soon as I figure out the elevator's working again, what am I going to do? I'm going to take the elevator.
Right.
You didn't change
Yeah.
me.
That's right.
You changed my behavior for a period of
Yeah.
time. As soon as I figure the elevator's working again, I'm going to
Right.
get right back on it. It didn't deal with the issue of me being more health conscious, which is what you targeted. It dealt with my behavior.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Right.
that's the point is those things are easy. When we're talking about when you're really changing um, that it's not even the thing about behavior is this: if you can change somebody's behavior, what you have to remember is that's not going to last unless it becomes
Right.
something that's self-motivating and there's something much richer that happens to them because of that changed behavior. It's just not going to
Yeah.
last. It's surface
Look.
level at the very best.
Right. I like that. I like the elevator as a metaphor, right? And so if we think about let's just say that the floors in a university building, right, represent um, degrees or stages. So let's say the first floor represents undergraduate, the second floor master's level, third level specialist, and the fourth floor is the doctoral level. So we can shape a student's behavior along with whatever their motivation is to go from being a high school graduate to getting to the next level and earning a bachelor's degree, right? So in that sense, we have transformed them from being an undergraduate student to going to the next floor, the next level. And now when they get off the elevator, they are all of a sudden, poof, now they're transformed into a master's level student, right? They hang out around there for a couple of years or a year or whatever it is. They go through the hoops, right? Behaviorally and psychoaffectively, everything. They go through the right hoops, and then they get on the elevator when they graduate, and they go poof to the next level, and they've been transformed into a specialist degree. And we do the same thing to the doctoral degree. But what happens when you've gone through all of the hoops and you go across and you're hooded as Dr. Brown, as Dr. Pearl, as Dr. whomever, and then all of a sudden, after the crowd goes wild, what then? You're at the top of that building on the top floor, that's like the end. Okay, fine. You can do postdoctoral work, but it still is just transforming you. There's got to be a transmutation for that person to get out of being just motivated to reach their potential. Now, how do they get to their exponential potential? That takes something different than just behavioral shaping or cognitive, re, uh, I just lost one of my own terminologies here. You can cognitively restructure someone's thinking. You can change how they're feeling. You can change their behavior, but there's still an essence that we're not tapping into. And that's what we're talking about with this transmutation. You can't get
That's
to the
right.
gold until you get through all of these layers of the metal. Right? I don't
You
know if
know
that
what?
makes any sense.
It does, Trace, and I'll tell you why, because I've said this about other things too, but I'm gonna tell you this straight out. I can tell anybody how to get a PhD.
Yep.
And I can prove to you that they can get it. It's not based on being
Yeah.
smart, but I can tell anybody how to do it.
Nope. Agreed.
But I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm not going to tell you is because that doesn't make you anything. Unless you really want to listen to me, because then I can tell you how to make that degree mean something. Because having
Yeah.
the degree doesn't mean anything, but being able to put it in practice because you have experience and a life lived, that might be different. But just getting a degree is
Yeah.
nothing. And I do find that
Right.
unfortunate, especially with the example that you've given. I know a lot of people who do half their college while they're in high school. Then they go finish those 2 years and they just keep going
Yeah.
and without a life lived
Right.
other than studying a book and taking some tests. Uh, they get a PhD, and I'm glad for them. They're probably good researchers,
Right.
but I doubt
Yep.
seriously they know a whole lot. And I mean that with all
That's
sincerity
right.
because they've spent a whole lot of
Mhm.
time
Yeah.
studying this much of the world, that much. And they know a lot about that
Yep.
from what they've read, but they don't know anything about the rest of this. And this is why,
Yeah.
this is how education has faltered, and especially, well, at all
Mhm.
levels. But if you think about the doctor of philosophy and what it used to mean,
Yeah.
the man of letters, when he knew about all of those things,
Right.
now he knows this and he knows nothing about these other things.
Yeah.
Because it used to be a
Right.
man who had lived life or a woman who had lived life. And
Yeah.
now that's not necessarily the case. So, but by saying that, I want to say one more thing about it. You don't have to have a PhD to be transmuted. You can.
Absolutely right.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
okay if you have one. It won't stop you in any way, but you
Yeah.
absolutely don't have to have one. That is not a
Right.
prerequisite for
Yeah.
becoming all that your human potential can make you. You don't have to have it at all. It's just really immaterial when it comes to
Yeah.
it, because that's not what makes
Right.
that person fulfill their full potential at all. And
Yeah.
I think I speak from experience there because I have the degree and I know what it gave me.
Yeah.
I'll admit it
Right.
gave me a lot. It gave me a professional life and I was able to teach. But that's not what made me who I am as a person. That's not at all what
Yeah.
did. What makes me who I am was the life lived and the experience
Yep.
I had and my interaction with the people that I've been with, the things I've taken from
Mhm.
them and put into place in my life and changed the ways I've thought and done things. Those are the things that have made me who I am. But
Mhm.
what's important is to be selective about that and to be
Yeah.
purposeful about those experiences and those people and the things that you allow to transmute you.
Yeah.
Because many things
Right.
can
Right.
transmute you,
Yeah.
but if you're purposeful about what it
Yeah.
is, that's when you can reach full potential. And I'm not saying, I don't want that to be misinterpreted as saying I've reached my full potential. I don't mean that. I do mean, though, I'm
Right.
dead set
Gotcha.
on the pathway. And I don't know how far I
Yeah.
am. I may be a long
Yeah.
ways from getting there, but I'm on the pathway. And that's what I want people to
Right. Right.
come to terms with, is finding that pathway for themselves. Sorry, Trace, I was
Yeah.
interrupting
You
you, but
know, last, no, 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 you aren't at all. No, I'm listening. I'm learning. I'm listening and learning. And I'm processing at the same time because, just last week, wasn't it? We were talking about we were talking about actually Zeno. What was our topic from last week? Do you remember? See, this is our seventh week now.
we were talking we were talking about putting ethics into practice, ethics for success.
Yep. And do you know if do you remember Zeno? Does that name ring a bell to you?
I don't
Zeno
remember.
and okay, all right. Well, so Zeno of Elea, I think that's where he was from, right? He was the one that came up with the paradoxes. All right, so like the paradox of the arrow and the paradox of the
Yeah.
forest.
Yes.
Right? Remember that? Right?
Yeah.
So for example, with the paradox of the forest, his contention was that uh, there's no end, right? You never get to the destination, which is kind of what you're talking about with this pathway that we're on to, the pathway to transmutation, let's say. Because just like with Zeno's paradox of the forest, you never get out of the forest because as you're walking from the center to the edge of the forest, some point you're halfway there. And then you keep walking, and then at some point you're halfway between where you were and where you're going at the end of the forest. You keep going, and it keeps going that way to infinity. That's the way that I almost conceptualize the transmutation of the human spirit into human potentiality. Is it becomes like Zeno's paradox of the forest. We're never there. It's like reaching enlightenment, or
Right.
reaching, this Satori experience where, yeah, you can have an experience where the colors are brighter than they were before, almost like, fluorescent in brightness. But you still have other levels that you can go because once you hit that one, now, oh, wait a minute. If I've expanded my potential to this point, what's next? So there's this pulling, right, to the next level. I think that is the noetic dimension that is pulling us. It's not like we're being driven. Hey, if you don't do this activity or you don't do this lesson, you're not going to pass this course, right? It's something different. It's qualitatively different. We're pulled to our actualizing potential,
Right.
you know. And is that kind of what you're saying too on
That
this? I'm
that
further
is
along now, toward the end of the forest, but I'm not there. I'm going to continue searching. I'm going to continue seeking. What are the limits of my potential?
right. In Buddhist practice, many, of course, their practice is to reach enlightenment or
Yeah.
full awakeness,
Right.
which I actually kind of like the way that they use that word to describe what they're trying to get to. So
Yeah.
the elimination of all illusion and to come to full truthfulness and to enlightenment. But what you hear serious practitioners talk about is a split second moment that they see it and then it's gone and they go search for it again.
Yeah.
It's like a
Right.
tantalizing taste of what is
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And so they continue that search. And I think to me, that's what it's like to be on a path is I think you get that taste of 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 I have the way I always interpret it for me is I have more potential. I have
Yeah.
I have more, not only think of it, it's like I have more opportunity is what I think. I don't think of it as
Right.
it's not a judgment statement to myself. It's not about I could have
Yeah.
done better. It's not that because I I try to realize that I did the best I could with
Hmm.
with all that I know and have, but I have more potential. I need more guidance. I need more comradeship to walk with me
Right.
through
Right.
those plains and through those fears. And I also like the way the Bible describes now I see through a veil.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's to me it's like more than one. And it's
Yeah.
like getting through those veils. And
Right.
so and I know you're not supposed to get through all of them. Uh, but
Yeah.
you're supposed to see better and better.
Right. And and if we look at let's say we come in as a base metal, right? Just human existence. And let's say, I mean, since we're kind of blending in, different faith traditions and and so on. And so if we look, since you mentioned the Bible, so if we look at the notion from a Christian perspective of justification, right? A person is justified once at this base level they accept Christ as their Lord and Savior, right? It's
Okay.
kind of my understanding. I may be off. But let's just say that that starts the justification process that transmutes, actually, in that case, I guess, from the old man into the new man, right? So there's a transmutation there that allows that person to then be, from the Christian tradition, justified and no longer separate from God. But it doesn't end there, right? Then there becomes a sanctification process. And so if there's a process, no one who is still alive is fully sanctified. They may be justified, but they're not fully sanctified until the transcendence, right? But if there's a sanctification process, that to me is like going through those different layers of the veil, right? Or stripping off the scales off of our eyes, where we can see things more clearly.
That's
But it's
God's
a
alchemy.
yeah, there you go. Right. That I would totally agree.
I
So,
love I love the Christian imagery of what that is.
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
also love that the Christian imagery applies to it the armor of God
Hmm.
of that you wear that as well as you go through
Yeah,
those trials. I like the imagery of that. But it's very similar to other traditions too. But I love the imagery
right.
of because I love the imagery of that moment for that person is their entryway into the pathway.
Yeah,
It's not their exit point.
right, right.
And even in Catholic tradition, they will talk about the church expectant
Hmm. Hmm.
and the church triumphant.
Right.
So the expectant church are the ones here on the ground.
Yeah,
The triumphant are those that have gone before. And so, and in what's in between is that pathway.
yeah,
And I think it's fascinating. You find it in all kinds of religious imagery in many traditions about just about this idea of changing us from that base metal
yeah.
to something much, much more.
Right,
And I
right.
just find that fascinating. And I find it almost as though um, it's a universal human need and desire.
Yeah.
Uh, if we open our hearts and minds to it, that this is what brings fulfillment, is to be in that
Hmm.
on a pathway to seeking that full human potential, or to seeking
Yeah.
that alchemy wherever it comes from for you.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, I
Right.
love the imagery of it.
Yeah. And just and this might actually even be, a topic for almost for part two of
Yeah,
this, because it really does continue going down a path that I think we know is important. Other people know is important, but how do you operationalize it? So if you say, yeah, I know that I need to get to the top of this mountain. I know that other people have done it before. But I'm not sure exactly with all of these different, potential pathways, which one is going to get me there in a way that's authentic to me, and hopefully do it in a way that I don't die in the process, right? Because there's all kinds of pitfalls, and you know,
right.
and I'm not even talking always, about literally dying, although
Yeah,
some people do, right? They take their own life. Suicide's rampant.
right.
But dying in the process of saying, you know what, I'm wore out. I'm too thin, in terms of the plastic. I've been recycled too many times, and I can't be recycled again. So it's easier for me just to, stagnate and just exist. And that's, that's what Nietzsche was talking about, with the sleepwalking masses.
Yeah,
People just go through life on autopilot, and they just die. Or people in professions. They become, we called them back in the military days, the road officers, or we have road professors, not road scholars, but road scholars, retired on active duty,
right.
you know. And so many people just quit, right? Because they lose the sparks, and they lose the chemistry that went on in the dungeons of ancient alchemy, which is in our soul. They lose that spark, and as a result, they just kick back and they die, to their life and to their potential. So I
Right.
think that's something that would be interesting to talk about, in another podcast, if you'd be up for doing it, and if anybody's interested.
I would definitely be up and talking about it this more because I think it might be a little bit more important than we've even given it treatment here. I love the idea that you brought it up, Trace. I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk about it a little bit, but the more that we've talked and been able to think about this, I think I just find it's connecting with it so much, um, and thinking about experiences in my life.
Yeah.
In particular, I'm thinking about special people who have sat down with me at various times,
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
and to provide with for me guidance. Some
Yeah.
that made an incredible difference, and some that were misguided, quite frankly.
Hmm. Right.
Um, but now, hindsight, of course, being a better view, uh, I know the difference. And
Yeah.
but I think to me, well, first of all, to me, what needs to what people need to seek out is an opportunity that fits with them and who they are, and something that
Agreed.
doesn't violate those core principles of who they are. Uh, let's
Right.
say, for instance, you are a Buddhist, um, or let's say, for instance, you are a Christian, and that's your tradition.
Hmm.
But you know what? See,
Hmm.
I think there is a pathway that violates neither and honors
Hmm.
both. Because we're not talking
Right.
about, we're talking about taking principles and applying them to your life. We're not talking about
Yeah.
violating principles that are in your life.
Right.
It's a totally different thing. And so I would like to talk about this more because I'd like to talk about what that is that can be
Yeah.
offered to people, uh, is what suggestions can we find and give to people that are safe, that are reasonable,
Yeah.
that are very effective and meaningful.
Yeah.
That's because that's what I always look
Yeah.
for. For me, I look for, okay, what's going to really make me grow? That's what I want.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think there's some
Yeah.
commonalities to lots of things. So I would like to talk about this more. And whenever we have the chance, I'd
Uh,
love.
You bet. And the connection on that to me, Randy, is a lot of times, if I would be teaching, let's say personality and counseling theories, to me, there's nothing more important than good theories, right? But remember, the late Yogi Berra, great baseball player, said,
Yeah.
in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is, right? So I always love that yogiism, but
Yes.
but on a professional side, I used to always say, look, I mean, the person that sees no value in a theory doesn't really know their theory, because it's the theory that gives us the grounding, it's the foundation, that is the base metal as far as I'm concerned, of
Yes.
of any discipline. So once we get the theory, like we've been talking about here today, even using, metaphors and analogies and so on, that to me provides the theory for someone to then be able to use as a jumping off point, not only for transformation, but then setting up the stage for transmutation. And the only way to transmute, I think, is to be able to come back down to this base level and then start building on the theory into the so what. Let's talk about some real practical application of this theory. What can you do today, tomorrow, and the next day in order to find this pathway that's going to be right for you to actually become the gold?
And then
So, right. So
the other
if that
thing,
sounds good to you, yeah, I mean, I'd like to continue that discussion next time.
me too.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
You want to send us off? Because
You know what? I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk about something interesting, and I'm glad you brought this topic up because it gave me lots of interesting thoughts, and I love it when you spring something on me. It is just like having coffee. Um, we've done this for a lot of years, and
yep.
every time we've come away with something interesting and new. And so I'm glad we had this opportunity. And I just want to tell everybody that has the opportunity to listen to have many blessings along the way. And we'll talk to you again very soon.
Yep. Amen. See you.